I didn't quite know what to expect jumping into Lost in Vivo, but I'm really happy that I did. A grotesquely beautiful adventure that held my attention the entire time through awesome game mechanics and a cryptically surreal narrative that had me glued to my computer throughout its 4 to 5 hour runtime. The story is pretty simple. It starts off with you walking your service dog during a rainstorm. Soon after, your corgi is somehow swept away and pushed down a storm drain. Your character then heads into the sewers to try and find his lost dog. I think that this serves as a really good opening for this journey. It really just shows what kind of game Lost in Vivo is going to be. While there are monsters, most of the scares here are psychological. I have been told that this is a lot like the Silent Hill series, but unfortunately I haven't ever been able to play those. It did, however, remind me a lot of the old Resident Evils, only because you have to kind of conserve ammo and be aware of how many bullets you have. I could see this being a deterrent for people that aren't used to this sort of survival gameplay, but personally I never was that annoyed, and I thought that it actually fit the game really well and added some tension that wouldn't be there if it wasn't like that. Another old school touch that the game has is the save points sprinkled throughout its mini levels. Once again, I could see this being kind of frustrating for modern players, but for me, I didn't think it was too bad. The game is paced really well, so the checkpoints weren't that far apart from each other. There were times when I would have to repeat certain segments of the game because I didn't save, but I think that this is justified given the theme of survival. This led to a really tense gaming experience because I didn't want to repeat some of the things that I had to do. The game's visuals are very stylized to look sort of like a PlayStation 1 game. I say stylized because while it does look retro, it also has this sort of modern feel to it that I thought was really appealing. I thought the stylized graphics of the game really served two functions. One, to serve as kind of like an ode to the original horror games on the PlayStation 1, but also to add to that surrealism that the game is going for. This simple aesthetic can either be gross and disturbing or macabre and beautiful. The gunplay is pretty simple, but I didn't think that the game really needed anything super special. You get a couple of different weapons and they're all pretty unique and they do different amounts of damage. My favorite is the shotgun just because it can one-shot kill pretty much anything in the game. A lot of the enemies aren't very strong, but they are crafty, teleporting behind you and going through walls. This provides for a really creepy atmosphere, but nothing that gets obnoxious like in other horror games that I've played. With all this said, the combat and the shooting I don't really feel like is the main focus. For me, the core of the game was more about exploring these creepy abandoned levels and getting sucked into the surreal world of Lost in Vivo. The environments had a lot of really spooky details that makes this game stand out within the horror genre. The last thing I want to mention before going into the real discussion is the sound. The sound here is amazing and I love almost everything about it. There are some parts where you have to whistle for your dog to see where he's went to and you can hear him barking. This is really creepy but also just really well implemented. This whistling mechanic is just one of my favorite things in the game because it puts you in the shoes of the main character. The monster sounds are also incredibly creepy and they're also very jarring. After almost every interaction with these things, I could feel my muscles tighten, and I think this is mainly due to the soundtrack and the sounds just blasting into my ears. The soundtrack is usually quiet and ambient but can go to a piano melody to an industrial frenzy. All of these things, from the mechanics to the sounds to the gameplay, I think create this really interesting experience that I don't think you'll forget for a very long time. If I'm honest, this video has been really hard to make because I don't want to spoil this for anyone that hasn't played the game. So if you haven't played it, go check it out right now, but I'm going to continue talking about it so that I can get my thoughts out. So spoilers from here on out. One of the first areas that you go into after the sewers is this abandoned train station. As you explore this area, you start to find notes that kind of detail the life of this woman that has died there. The letters seem to talk about her struggle with depression and self-image problems and how she feels that she's obese. Eventually you find a letter that says that she's now in a relationship, and just for a moment it gives you some hope for this character. But in one of the last letters that I found, it talks about how this girl's partner is asking her to lose weight. This may be hinting at abuse, but I'm not sure. Either way, she has this problem with self-image, and I think it pushes her a little too far. On top of the stresses with mental illness, she's also due to have a baby soon. One of these notes you stumble upon is written by a station attendant, and they talk about a night while they were working where a girl had jumped in front of a train. There's a ghost that also haunts the train station, and it's the main enemy that you're going to be fighting here. The game makes it pretty clear that this ghost is a female, so it's not too much of a stretch to imagine that this ghost and the person writing the notes is one and the same. At least, that's what I thought on my first playthrough. As you progress in the game, you come across some really surreal moments that I think hints at something different. One of the enemies you come across is a mirror that tries to kill you. In its shattered glass, you can see a reflection, and in this reflection is a woman. In another instance, you come across a room that has an apple. In this part of the game, you won't be able to progress unless you eat the apple, but the game kind of tricks you because once you eat it, some bars come up over the exit. You can still go through the bars, and that's how you actually progress in this part. I think that this scene is symbolic of having some sort of eating disorder and hinting that the main character that you're playing as may have that. In another scene, you come across these brain things. In order to continue, you have to smash them, but before you can, they always comment and berate you.
To accomplish? Without me, you're just hollow. You're pathetic. You need fear to motivate you.
These comments always hint at something like an addiction or maybe a bad relationship. Now, the first time I played this game, I just assumed that the main character was a male because I'm a male. But on my second playthrough, I started to second guess my assessment and started to realize that it might be a girl, and maybe the girl that you're playing as and the one in the notes is one and the same. This is just a theory though, and something that I was thinking while playing the game. This cryptic and ambiguous narrative is one of the things that makes Lost in Vivo so special. It makes it so that this world creeps into your skull and stays there. Not only will you be immersed in the experience while you're playing the game, but it will be there long after. While the game is short, I do think that there's a lot of replay value here. Multiple endings and random events can keep this game alive. While I do like some of the random events, there was one time that I disliked it. When you go into the save rooms, they feel like this really nice sanctuary that's really cool juxtaposed with the rest of the game. My only complaint is that one time I went into the save room and one of these random events were triggered. Instead of allowing me to save, it had a crying bloody baby on the altar. And I just didn't really like this because I felt like the save room was cool as a sanctuary for your character. I feel that having moments of tranquility in your horror game is really important, and allowing the player to know that they're safe is also just a really good thing because it adds a contrast to the regular gameplay, which in turn makes the scary parts even scarier. The last thing I want to talk about is New Game Plus. Once you beat the game, you have the opportunity to go back but keep all your weapons that you have already obtained from your last save file. Older horror games used to do this quite often, and I think it's a good practice. Not only does this allow you to play the game multiple times and have it still feel fresh, but I think that it also adds to character development. Like most situations in life, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's always really scary. The same thing goes for horror games. The first time you play it, you're probably going to be a lot more scared than the second time. I love the idea of New Game Plus because it makes this terrifying experience into a shooting gallery. While you still have to find ammo, it won't be as stressful as the first time you've played the game. I think that this is a really cool type of character development that only games can give you. I have always interpreted this feature as the character growing and being able to handle their new environment. This is really special to me because not only did the character grow, but so did the player. These things will make it so that this 4 to 5 hour runtime becomes 15, 20 hours, for me at least, because I just want to keep returning to the world of Vivo, not only for the interesting narrative, but the New Game Plus and the different modes and endings. I love this game, and I think if you still haven't played it, go check it out. And if you have, go ahead and write a comment in the comments section if you've had the same thoughts or different. Thank you for listening, and this is KillRed40. I'm out.